afternoon, boys and girls. My name is Roald Dahl, and I am an author. I was born September 13th, 1916, in Wales, a country in Britain. My wonderful parents, much like yours I'm sure, thought that education was the absolute most important thing. They sent me to a boarding school in England to get my education. Now, a boarding school is a little different than what you have here. You go away to school, and you do not come home in the evenings to your mum and dad. But my teachers there, unlike the ones here at Bridgeport, were cruel and nasty and terrible, horrible people. You are too young to know what happened there. But I did not let this get me down. I used this to write the adults in my books. Those horrible, nasty teachers are the horrible, nasty people in my books. They were terrible. Unlike your teachers, as I've said. But that is not the only thing that I took from my life and put into my books. Mr. Cadbury makes those little Cadbury eggs. He used to send chocolates to my school, and the pupils would get to taste them. They were delicious. And I used to dream of inventing a chocolate bar that even Mr. Cadbury would be impressed with. That never did happen. But I used that from my life to put in my book, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. But you ought to know a secret. My teachers at my school put on my grade card that I am not a good writer. That I was not a good writer as a child. But I showed them, didn't I? I have written many, many books, many that you have heard of, and probably have seen the films that have been made from them. There's Matilda, the BFG, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. There are many, and you should all check them out to the library for a bit of reading. They're great fun. But enough about me. I'm going to introduce you to one of my books. Some of you may have heard it, some of you may have not, but I hope you do enjoy it. This is called George's Marvelous Medicine. I'm only going to read you a small bit of it. The first chapter is entitled Grandma. I'm going shopping in the village, George's mother said to George on Saturday morning, so do be a good boy and don't get into mischief. This was a silly thing to say to a small boy at any time. It immediately made him wonder what sort of mischief he might get into. And don't forget to give Grandma her medicine at 11 o'clock, the mother said. Then out she went, closing the back door behind her. Grandma, who was dozing in her chair by the window, opened one wicked little eye and said, "Now you heard what your mother said, George. Don't forget your medicine." "No, Grandma," George said, "and just try to behave yourself for once while she's away." "Yes, Grandma," George said. George was bored to tears. He didn't have a brother or a sister. His father was a farmer, and the farm they lived on was miles away from anywhere, so there were never any children to play with. He was tired of staring at pigs and hens and cows and sheep. He was especially tired of having to live in the same house as that grisly old grunion of a grandma. Looking after her all by himself was hardly the most exciting way to spend a Saturday morning. "You can make me a nice cup of tea for a start," Grandma said to George. "That'll keep you out of mischief for a few minutes." "Yes, Grandma," George said. George couldn't help disliking Grandma. She was a selfish, grumpy old woman. She had pale brown teeth and a small, puckered-up mouth like a dog's bottom. "How much sugar in your tea today, Grandma?" George asked her. "1 spoonful and no milk." Most grandmothers are lovely, kind, helpful old ladies, but not this one. She spent all day and every day sitting in her chair by the window, complaining, grousing, grouching, grumbling, griping about something or other. Never once, not even on her best day, did she say, "Well, how are you this morning, George? Or why don't we have a game of snakes and ladders? Or how was your day at school?" She didn't seem to care about other people, only about herself. She was a miserable old grouch. George went into the kitchen and made Grandma a cup of tea with a tea bag. He put 1 spoon of sugar in it and no milk. He stirred the sugar well and carried the cup into the living room. Grandma sipped the tea. "It's not sweet enough," she said. "Put more sugar in." George took the cup back to the kitchen and added another spoonful of sugar. He stirred it again and carried it carefully into Grandma. "Where's the saucer?" she said. "I won't have a cup without a saucer." George fetched her a saucer. "And what about a teaspoon, if you please?" "I've stirred it for you, Grandma. I stirred it well. I'll stir my own tea, thank you very much, she said. Fetch me a teaspoon. When George's mother or father was home, Grandma never ordered George about like this. It was only when she had him on her own that she began treating him badly. You know what's the matter with you, the old woman said, staring at George over the rim of the teacup with those bright, wicked little eyes. Here is an illustration of George and his grandmother. You're growing too fast. Boys who grow too fast become stupid and lazy. But I can't help it if I'm growing fast, Grandma, George said. Of course you can, she snapped. Growing's a nasty, childish habit. But we have to grow, Grandma. If we didn't grow, we'd never be grown-ups. Rubbish, boy, rubbish, she said. Look at me. Am I growing? Certainly not. But you did once, Grandma. Only very little, the old woman answered. I gave up growing when I was extremely small, along with all the other nasty, childish habits like laziness and disobedience and greed and sloppiness and untidiness and stupidity. You haven't given up any of these things, have you? I'm still only a little boy, Grandma. You're 8 years old, she snorted. That's old enough to know better. If you don't stop growing soon, it'll be too late. Too late for what, Grandma? It's ridiculous, she went on. You're nearly as tall as me already. George took a good look at Grandma. She certainly was a very tiny person. Her legs were so short she had to have a footstool to put her feet on, and her head only came halfway up the back of the armchair. Daddy says it's fine for a man to be tall, George said. Don't listen to your daddy, Grandma said. Listen to me. But how do I stop myself growing? George asked her. Eat less chocolate, Grandma said. Does chocolate make you grow? It makes you grow the wrong way, she snapped. Up instead of down. Grandma sipped some tea but never took her eyes from the little boy who stood before her. Never grow up, she said. Always down. Yes, Grandma. And stop eating chocolate. Eat cabbage instead. Cabbage? Oh, no, I don't like cabbage, George said. It's not what you like or what you don't like, Grandma snapped. It's what's good for you that counts. From now on, you must eat cabbage 3 times a day. Mountains of cabbage. And if it's got caterpillars in it, so much the better. Well, that is where I'm going to stop with George. I do hope you've enjoyed the story, and it is probably in your library here at school or in your town. Please check it out and enjoy my book. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.